The flowers hit the mug before Lydia Cross could catch them. Deputy Guard Voss had not touched the wreath deliberately. His shoulder had caught it as he pushed past the line of mourners toward the open grave. But he had not apologized. He had not even looked down. He kept walking. 100 people stood in the cemetery under a grey Mississippi sky. His partner, Deputy Ellis, followed 3 steps behind, scanning the crowd the way men do when they want to be feared. They stopped at the edge of the grave. Voss looked across the casket at a small woman in a black dress. Lydia's voice came out barely above a whisper. "My husband's burial is right now, Deputy." Voss looked at the grave, then back at Lydia. "Court order," he said, holding out a manila envelope. The envelope never reached Lydia's hands. A hand closed around Voss's wrist. "Not hard, not angry, just still." "Not today," said a calm voice. Naomi Cross stood on the other side of the grave, calm and resolute. Ellis reached for her shoulder. Naomi stepped sideways. Ellis's hand found air, and he stumbled into the soft earth. Voss lunged forward. Naomi sidestepped him too, used his own reach against him, and pressed his arm behind him. "My uncle's burial will now continue," she said, loudly enough for every witness to hear. "You can leave it on the gate." Voss took the envelope. His face was white with rage. But for the next 22 minutes, he stood at the edge watching. After 15 years in Air Force cyber operations, her commanding officer called it a transition. Naomi called it her hardest assignment. She had spent 15 years tracking money through encrypted networks and finding corruption in war zone procurement contracts. Lydia pulled an envelope from the kitchen drawer. Traffic tickets, impound receipts, court summons, notes in Marcus's careful block letters. Naomi's attorney, Malcolm Reed, arrived the next morning. "Pike's brother-in-law holds the registrations," he said, spreading out the files. For 48 hours, Naomi did not sleep. She moved through public records the way she moved through encrypted financial networks. Sheriff Roland Pike arrived at 10 that morning. He wore civilian clothes, carrying the easy authority of a man never told no. "I came here to be reasonable," Pike said, "and I heard you." Naomi replied, "My answer is no." They arrested Lydia at 7 the next morning. Naomi arrived as they were pulling her from the back of a patrol car. Naomi watched, her resolve hardening. The worst day of their professional lives had only just begun. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you are watching from. And make sure you subscribe, because the story you are about to hear is only getting started. What those deputies found in that cemetery was not the end. It was the first mistake in a chain of mistakes that would bring an entire county to its knees. Naomi had not come home to fight anyone. She had come home because her uncle Marcus was dead. And her aunt Lydia should not have to stand at a graveside alone. She had driven 11 hours from Virginia, where she had spent the last 6 months doing something she had not done in nearly 2 decades. Nothing. Sitting on a rented porch, reading novels, letting her phone stay silent. After 15 years in the United States Air Force, working in cyber operations and military intelligence, her commanding officer had called it a transition. Her doctor had called it mandatory. Naomi called it the hardest assignment of her career. She had spent 15 years tracking money through encrypted networks, finding corruption in war zone procurement contracts, rebuilding conspiracies from data fragments that looked like nothing to everyone else. She had worked alongside DHS investigators, FBI financial crime units, and 2 congressional oversight committees. She had never carried a weapon in the field, not because she couldn't, but because she had learned early that the most powerful thing she could carry was a pattern nobody else had noticed. She was not a soldier people imagined. She was the reason some of those soldiers came home, and she had come home to bury her uncle. She had known Marcus Cross her whole life. He was the kind of man who fixed other people's cars for free on Saturdays and pretended he'd just been working on his own. He had a garden. He went to church twice on Sundays and once on Wednesdays. He had never been in serious trouble in his life, which is why the envelope Lydia pulled from the kitchen drawer that first evening broke something open in Naomi's chest. Traffic tickets, impound, receipts, court summons, handwritten, notes in her uncle's careful block letters, tracking every payment, every court date, every phone call, and every time the phone went unanswered. 9 traffic stops in 1 year, 4 impounds, 3 court appearances, 2 bench warrants issued for unpaid fines. The last impound was the week he died. Lydia said. His truck. They took it on a Tuesday. He walked 2 miles to the pharmacy to get his blood pressure medication. It was 103 degrees that afternoon. She paused. The pharmacist found him on the sidewalk outside. They say it was a heart attack. Lydia's voice did not break, but her hands were shaking. I say it was a bill he never should have owed. Naomi sat very still with the papers in her hands. She was not angry yet. She was reading. The name at the bottom of every impound receipt was the same, Delta Crown Recovery. Naomi's attorney, Malcolm Reed, arrived at Lydia's house the following morning with tired eyes and a folder of prior lawsuits against the Mason County Sheriff's Department. He had been fighting this county for 12 years. He had sued them 6 times and lost 5 before discovery even opened. He knew exactly what Delta Crown Recovery was. Pike's brother-in-law holds the registrations, Malcolm said. But the ownership is spread through 6 different LLCs. If you look at the business records alone, it's unreadable. But if you follow the contracts, the county towing referrals, the detention management fees, the property auctions, it all flows uphill to Pike, Naomi said, and above him, Malcolm said, Judge Harlan Voss signs the warrant batches. Claire Benton routes complaint reviews through her office and loses them. The detention facility expanded 2 years ago under a private management contract. That contract pays bonuses tied to occupancy rates. He spread his hands. You need bodies to fill beds. You need fines to generate warrants. You need stops to generate fines. And you need targets who won't be believed, Naomi said. Malcolm nodded. They chose the same roads every time, he said. Routes used by out-of-county workers, college students, church buses, rural families, people who have to keep moving to survive, people who can't afford to miss work for a court appearance, people who pay quietly because fighting costs more than settling. Naomi laid the last receipt on the table. Her uncle had made 11 separate payments over 14 months. Every payment went to Mason County Court, Mason County Detention Processing, or Delta Crown Recovery. Not 1 penny back, not 1 apology, not 1 drop charge. What happened to the complaints? Naomi asked. Gone, Malcolm said. Witnesses changed their stories. Dashcam footage has technical failures. 3 plaintiffs I represented received threatening calls. 1 had her car broken into the night before a deposition. Naomi looked out Lydia's kitchen window. A Mason County patrol car was parked at the corner of the street. It had been there since she arrived home from the cemetery. They started watching me fast, she said. The cemetery. Confrontation was all over the department by noon, Malcolm said. 2 deputies. A woman nobody recognized. Gone in 12 seconds, he paused. They ran your plates. They know who you are. Naomi pulled her laptop toward her. Good, she said. Good? Malcolm frowned. Frightened people make moves. Moves leaves records. Naomi opened 3 windows on her screen. And I am very good at reading records for 48 hours. Naomi did not sleep. She moved through public records the way she had spent 15 years moving through encrypted financial networks, slowly, methodically, letting the shape emerge before she named what she was looking at. Court filings, business registrations, county budget line items, property documents, campaign donation records, land deeds filed the same months as large contract awards, aerial photographs of the impound lot showing vehicles never reclaimed but not appearing in auction records, financial disclosures with gaps precisely where contracts overlapped. At 3:14 in the morning, Naomi found the first clean connection, a consulting payment from Delta Crown Recovery to a non-profit wellness foundation. The foundation's registered director was Pike's wife. The payment date was 7 days after the county detention contract was renewed for 3 years. At 4:41 am, she found the second. Judge Voss had signed 63 bench warrants in a single batch on the 91st day after fine notices were issued. Not the 90th, the 91st, 1 day after the grace period that would have allowed appeal. 63 warrants, 1 signature. 11 minutes. At 6:02 am, she found the third. A traffic stop data report buried in a county commissioner packet from 2 years earlier showed that 91% of high-fee stops in Mason County occurred within 4 miles of 3 specific highway sections. The same 3 sections where Delta Crown had installed its own roadside towing markers. She sent everything to Malcolm at 6:15. He called 90 seconds later. How did you do this in 2 days? He said. I didn't find anything new, Naomi said. It was all public. Nobody connected it because nobody was looking for the shape. They were looking for individual acts, and you saw the system, Malcolm said. I saw the revenue model, Naomi said, which means I can prove design. This was not misconduct. This was policy. Malcolm was quiet for a moment. Pike is going to move on you, he said finally. I know, Naomi said. Let him. Sheriff Roland Pike arrived at Lydia's house at 10 that morning. He drove himself. No cruiser. His personal vehicle. He wore civilian clothes, which was worse somehow. It meant he had thought about the optics. Naomi watched him from the porch steps as he came up the walk. Pike was tall and silver-haired and carried himself with the easy authority of a man who had not heard the word no in a very long time. He had the kind of face that photographed well and that people in small rooms trusted before he had said anything worth trusting. Major Cross, he said, stopping at the base of the steps. Sheriff. Naomi did not stand. Pike glanced back toward the street. The patrol car that had been watching the house was gone. This visit was of the record. I want to be plain with you, he said. What happened yesterday at the cemetery was my deputies acting without proper judgment. I've spoken to them, that's generous. Naomi said, I also want you to understand that Mason County has complex dynamics. Things look different from outside than they do when you're responsible for keeping communities safe with the resources you have. He put one foot on the bottom step. Your uncle had a difficult relationship with county ordinances. That's a matter of record. 9 traffic stops in 1 year, Naomi said. 4 impounds. A truck seized in 103-degree heat while he was trying to reach his blood pressure medication. Pike's expression did not shift. Laws apply to everyone. They do, Naomi agreed. Including the ones about using law enforcement infrastructure for private financial gain. The easy manner went away. It did not vanish dramatically. It simply withdrew, like a tide pulling back to expose what had been underneath the whole time. I came here to be reasonable. Pike said, and I heard you. Naomi said. My answer is no. He stared at her for a long moment. You're outside your jurisdiction here, Major. He turned to leave. I'd be careful what walls you knock on in this county. Some of them are holding up more than you know. Naomi watched him walk back to his car. I know exactly what they're holding up, she said quietly. He probably did not hear her. That was fine. She was not talking to him. They arrested Lydia at 7 the next morning. Obstruction of justice. Evidence tampering. Interference with an active investigation. Naomi arrived at the county station as they were pulling Lydia from the back of a patrol car. Her aunt was still in her housecoat. Her slippers were the ones with the small flowers on them that she wore every morning to water her plants. Her wrists were cuffed in front of her, and she was trying to keep her chin up even though every person who saw her could see she was frightened. Something inside Naomi went absolutely quiet. Not the quiet of defeat, the quiet of decision. Sheriff. Pike stood on the station steps, arms folded, watching her cross the parking lot. Serious charges, he called out. For a retired schoolteacher. Malcolm moved beside Naomi. Don't. I came down one step. You've been busy, Major, pulling records, making calls, sending files to people you think are your allies. He shook his head slowly. In this county, I know before the file arrives. Lydia looked across the parking lot at Naomi. Her voice did not shake. Don't stop, she said. Pike heard it. Naomi saw something move in his face. Not fear, something adjacent to it. The recognition of a man who has just realized that the person in front of him does not respond to the things that usually make people fold. Naomi lifted her phone. Sheriff Pike. This exchange is being transmitted live to my attorney's office. 2 journalists and a federal complaint intake line. You have just publicly connected my aunt's arrest to my active investigation of your department. That connection is now part of the record. The deputies shifted. Pike looked at her phone, then at his deputies, then back at Naomi. Process her, he said quietly, and walked inside. Naomi watched the door close behind him. Then she turned to Malcolm. We need Torres, federal investigator. Elena Torres had been watching Mason County for 3 years. Not because she lacked evidence, because she lacked architecture. Every complaint she received was individual. A stop, a fine, a missing dashcam file. Each case, taken alone, was a pattern of nothing. Taken together, they were a system. But nobody had ever shown her the system until now. The meeting happened in the back room of a church 2 towns over, while rain moved across the roof. Torres spread Naomi's files across a folding table and spent 40 minutes with them in silence. She looked up. You built this in 48 hours. I had the files in 1 day, Naomi said. The map took longer. Most people bring me stories, Torres said. You brought me coordinates. Can you open a case? Yes, but Pike has survived open cases. I need direct evidence of coordination. I need the network core talking to itself. Torres looked at the map again. The Delta Crown dinner is tomorrow night. Malcolm looked up from the corner where he had been sitting. No, he said. I want them in one room, Naomi said. I want Pike of balance. I want the others looking at each other, wondering who's been talking. They will have you arrested before you reach the Buffett, Malcolm said. Then they arrest me in a room wired by the FBI. Pause turned to Malcolm. She's not wrong about the pressure. She could get hurt. Naomi looked at the file spread across the table. She thought about Lydia in that parking lot in flower slippers. She thought about Marcos walking 2 miles in July heat. I'm already in it, she said. I'd rather be in it on purpose. Outside, the rain got heavier. Tors gave her the parameters. Cameras, audio, exit control, agents inside and outside. Medical on standby. If I tell you to pull back, Tors said. You pull back immediately, agreed. Naomi said. Malcolm rubbed his eyes. I hate everything about this. Naomi gathered her files. That means we're doing it right, she said. The Delta Crown Recovery Annual Safety Partnership Dinner was held in a renovated warehouse behind the company's main impound lot. As Naomi arrived, she could see the impound lot through the chain link fence. Hundreds of vehicles lined under floodlights. Some had children's car seats visible through the rear windows. Some had church parking stickers on the bumpers. Some had tools in the truck beds, ladders, paint rollers, landscaping equipment. The possessions of working people who had been caught in a machine and had not found their way back out. Inside, men in pressed uniforms clinked glasses with men in business suits beneath a banner that read Keeping Mason County Safe. The room changed when Naomi walked in. She did not hurry. She did not announce herself. She simply walked to the center of the room and stood still. And the room reorganized itself around her presence the way a body of water will shift when something is dropped into it. Sheriff Pike saw her first. Judge Voss saw Pike's face change and turned. Darl Claiborne was leaning toward a county commissioner and stopped mid-sentence. Naomi walked to Pike. Sheriff, you have some nerve walking in here, he said. Naomi looked around the room. Is this where the receipts go? Between the entries and the toasts, a few people shifted. Pike's voice dropped. You need to leave. My uncle paid this machine $900 the year he died. Naomi said not quietly. 300 in court fees. 400 in impound fees, 200 in processing. He paid it in installments because he was a retired maintenance worker on a fixed income. He walked 2 miles in July heat because his truck was in your lot, and the fee had not cleared yet. She paused. He died on the sidewalk 3 blocks from the pharmacy. The room was silent. Judge Voss stood. This is a private event. How much did it pay? Naomi asked him directly. The warrant batches. 63 in one signature session. 11 minutes. What was the occupancy bonus for that quarter? Voss' face went flat. I don't know what you are. The consulting payment to your wife's foundation, she said to Pike. 7 days after the detention contract renewal. The towing markers on the 3 highway sections that generated 91% of your high-fee stops. The impound vehicles that never made the auction record. A private detention executive near the back of the room looked toward the exit. Naomi saw it. So did Pike. Darbenton moved close to him. Roland, don't. But Pike was already too far past the point where listening was possible. You think you can walk in here with your theories and your records and destroy 20 years of work, he said. Voice low and thick. You didn't build something, Naomi said. You harvested people. There's a difference. Pike's hand moved toward his jacket. Tori's voice came from the side entrance. Federal agents. Hands visible. The room erupted. Agents moved in from 3 doors. Pike drew his weapon. Naomi was already moving. She covered the distance into steps, caught his wrist before he could level the barrel, and drove his arm into the table beside him. The weapon discharged once into the ceiling. The sound was enormous in the closed space. People screamed. Pike struggled, but Naomi held his arm against the table with everything she had, and he could not find the angle. Tors was there in for seconds. In 6 seconds, Pike was cuffed. In 8, agents had moved to Voss, to Benton, to the detention executive, who had almost reached the door. The room that had protected Pike for 20 years was now looking at itself. Pike looked around. He understood. The circle was broken. Voss authorized the warrant batches, he said, before Benton could tell him to stop. Benton buried the complaints. The consulting payments went through Delta Crown invoicing. The detention bonuses were tied to a booking threshold. I didn't run this alone, Roland, Voss shouted, but it was already in the cameras, already in the audio, already over. The arrests happened before sunrise. Sheriff Roland Pike, Judge Harlan Voss, District Attorney Claire Benton, 3 deputies, 2 county commissioners, the owner of Delta Crown Recovery. By noon, network news fans had formed a second ring around the courthouse. The same reporters who had ignored the complaints of Marcus Cross's neighbors for years now used words like systemic and organized. The same anchors who had never covered a story about Delta Crown Recovery now explained the corruption to viewers as though they had been watching it all along. Naomi watched. From across the street, she watched the people who came to the courthouse steps with impound receipts and court notices and photographs of family members who had never gotten an answer. She thought about how long they had been waiting. She thought about Marcus walking home from the courthouse after his third appearance, writing the amount in his careful block letters, so he would not forget. Lydia was released at 2:16 that afternoon. She came out of the federal building in the same housecoat they had arrested her in. Naomi met her on the steps. They held each other without speaking for a long moment. "Is it over?" Lydia asked. Naomi thought about the folder Taurus had handed her the previous evening. Other counties. Same model. Same revenue structure. Different names. "The worst of it is," Naomi said, "the rest is work." Lydia pulled back and looked at her. "Then go do it," she said. Marcus would have. Naomi looked at the courthouse steps. Voices were rising. One at first, then two, then a crowd. She thought about the highway outside town. The same stretch of road where generations of families had been targeted and fined and drained and told they were wrong to complain. She thought about how Pike had called it his road. She thought about what it would mean to be the kind of person who believed that. Then she stopped. Thinking about Pike, she thought about Marcus instead. About his garden. About the way he fixed other people's cars on Saturdays. About a man who had never asked for much and had still been taken apart by a system that was designed to look like the law. Naomi took Lydia's hand. They walked down the courthouse steps together, toward the crowd, toward the voices, toward the road that had never belonged to anyone but the people who traveled it. No road stays stolen forever, not when the right person decides to take it back. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe so you never miss the next one. See you in the next one.